So I will start explaining a little bit of the big picture of what is Univision and where many TVs stand. No, I think televisions are quite behind newspapers and digital native companies in terms of the digital landscape. It has been like that probably because of its success and because the business is not so broken. And though this may sound like a not very optimistic statement, I think on the other side there are some good news for TVs and for companies like Univision. The first of all is we have learned a lot from newspapers and digital native companies. Learn from the mistakes, but also from the good things that have been happening in the last years. No? From when the first time I arrived to a TV, I come from my background is in newspapers. I had the feeling I was going back at least to 2004, 2005, and that was my first feeling. But what are the good news about all this? First of all, I mean, as I said, all the learning in the last years. Second of all, we have something that everybody is looking for, and that is video. A company like us, our DNA is video, and maybe we can say, no, that's not the video people want to see on the internet, but the sensibility that we have in our newsrooms and the capacity to move from that kind of video to other kind of video, that's easier than moving from text to video. And the third of all is that we have the resources. So as I said before, TVs are still making quite a lot of money, and moving, it's not the same to try to do a digital transformation when you are not making so much revenue, when the environment is not optimistic, when there are layoffs, and that's not happening still on TVs, no? So I think it's a moment where we can move pretty fast to a more digital company and a more digital newsrooms. I will explain later these graphics. No, I'm saying it looks pretty obvious when we see that graphic. That's a video graphic of Univision in the last months, and I'm asking good news or bad news. I mean, I'm gonna answer. Even as I said that it looks easy, the answer to this, I will explain it later. And I was explaining the advantages that a company like Univision has, and one of those big opportunities are people like Jorge Ramos. No, so Jorge, he represents. I think nothing can represent more the legacy world as someone like Jorge. No, he's an anchor. He has been doing the same job for 30 years at the same time, 30 minutes newscast. So he's like legacy. But someone like Jorge, he has understood very well where things are moving. He always talks about himself as a dinosaur, something that I completely disagree with him. And let me see if this works. The kind of job, let me go back. This is not working. No. It should be working anyway. I mean, you can look at Jorge on Facebook. Every time that Jorge jumps onto Facebook Live, that's millions of users, millions every time. It's a guarantee that when he starts playing around, and that's something we're improvising permanently with the news in the newsroom. He sits around there in the middle of the newsroom, and we say, "Hey, Jorge, the Chapo was just captured in Mexico," and I mean, with an iPhone, you get there, you record Jorge for 2 minutes, he can talk forever, and that's millions of users. So these kind of people and anchors, and they are realizing that their brand and the impact they can have moving to all these platforms, it's huge. Of course, it benefits their personal brand, and it benefits also Univision brand. So Jorge is a perfect case of what is happening. I think how we covered the democratic debate with the Washington Post a month ago. Now, if we look back 4 years from now, it would have been pretty traditional, our digital coverage, maybe live streaming, a live blog, all that stuff. So when it came to this year democratic debate, we had to be Facebook Live, of course. Facebook was one of the main partners with the Washington Post, so it was the three brands that were there were Univision, the Washington Post, and Facebook. So we were doing Facebook Live, we were tweeting, of course, and everything that's around Twitter. We were on Instagram. We partnered with Purple, that they will be here tomorrow in one of Rosenthal Obsession bots, and Rebecca Harris, that she comes from CUNY University. She has created a platform called Purple, so we spoke with them, and we were texting and sending messages to our audience of what was going on the debate. Hispanics specifically love messaging apps, so we experiment with Purple, also with Snapchat, and with Second Screen, with Connecta. No? So for me as an editor, trying to control this new environment, I mean, it's totally impossible. No? And I think we're going to talk later with Vivian of how this distributed content affects to our workflows, and how do you organize a newsroom, what kind of people do you need. But this kind of coverage was a huge change. So Univision video traffic. Here, if we look at this graphic, I'm not explaining where does this traffic come from or where this traffic is. No, if there is not a differentiation between O&O, Facebook. So we're not talking about monetizing. We are talking only about audience. But the reality is this. No? And here comes the answer if it's good news or bad news. And it's not going to be my answer. And it's going to be the business answer. So this is January. If we look at the graphic on top, the amplified, and most of that is Facebook. The news, this was part of a conversation with the business side of the company. Hey, this is January. So, I mean, we were super happy of looking at that graphic on the newsroom. Traffic growing, but when we look down, and that's our O&O, traffic is flat. Traffic is totally flat. No? So what I thought it was news, for the business side of the company, it was not good news at all. And I was talking before of how TVs are moving to the digital landscape, and I believe newsrooms and journalists are moving much faster to think about the audience than, of course, the business side. No, our experience is totally different than the New York Times or than other kind of business models, because as I said before, and I think I can say this publicly, Univision only in digital, a company that has come in the last year and has moved, it makes more than $100 million revenue only on digital. No? With a pretty weak strategy in the last years, no, and that's a lot of money. So this is the reality of our moment. What are we going to do, no, with that reality? Years ago, I would have said, no, let's move where the audience is. Let's build audience. The money will come later. No, I think that was my mentality like a decade ago. But I think we have to be much smarter, and I think we have to find the balance between the business objectives and the distributed content. No, I don't want to go faster than the business, because if we want to build, and our main purpose is to do journalism, and if we want to do journalism, and we need journalists, and we want to build a team and hire good journalists, we need the money. So the strategy is going at the same rhythm, maybe a little bit faster than the business, but we have to be quite balanced in that, no? So also, and to do that, we need to create a very data-driven culture in the newsroom. So we need to understand minute by minute what is happening with our traffic, so that we can shift our strategy. Embrace a startup model, no? That it's something, it can be obvious for startups that maybe here in this room. That's not so easy to tell as to do in a legacy company as we are. Of course, we need to adapt video content to different platforms. As I was saying before, we have tons of video, but we have to adapt it and diversify the skills of the team. No? We are bringing people that are, I mean, that years ago we didn't know even they exist. So